Okay, so we've got pretty much a full house now. So the ones who aren't here, the empty seats, those are the ghosts. We always like to have ghosts come in as well. So you've got an empty seat next to you, that might be a ghost. Thank you. But anyway, it's supposed to be the talk now, am I correct?
Yes, that's right, Ajahn.
Okay, and then afterwards questions and answers.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. So the talk this evening, they said, was supposed to be on the stream winning and how it works and how to get there. And that's kind of a deeper talk that I've usually given when I come here. And when I say a deeper talk, I still remember the one of the BF's presidents when I first started coming to Singapore once asked me, he said, Ajahn Brahm, can you please give a deep talk on Buddhism tonight? He'd heard all the talks about the two bad bricks in the wall and open the door of your heart and all the jokes. And he was a lawyer. And anyway, I said, okay, I'll give a deep talk. And it was on like non-self. And the next morning he picked me up from, I think I was staying at the Thai temple. He picked me up to take me out to breakfast. And the first thing he said was, Ajahn Brahm, don't do that again, please. I did give a deep talk and he hadn't slept all night. It was challenging for him. But I don't mind challenging people, simply because when you have to talk about stream winning, it is a very powerful subject, and it will challenge many of the ways you look at the world. So please be ready for this. And first of all, the way this world works, at least talking in Singapore is sometimes better than talking in places like Australia or even UK. You have some idea of the thing we call samsara and rebirth, reincarnation, doesn't matter what you wish to call it. And that is something really powerful. When I was a young man, it was something I kind of was obvious to me that people get reincarnated. And it seems that sometimes people die when they're young, they're not really finished yet. And even if you are, you have a driving test and you fail, you always have another chance to do it again. If you have some course which you fail, you can always, go back to school and take the course again. The idea that you only have one go at life never made sense to me. But not only that, there was just too much evidence. I was a scientist, trained as a scientist. Beliefs didn't count when there was hard evidence to show there was something else going on. And many of you, these days especially, you can go to these hypnotherapists. Not all of you will be able to get a past life from a hypnotherapy, but some people do. And they can check those lives out from the past. And when they do, they just get so surprised. We had one of our presidents of our Buddhist Society of Western Australia try some hypnotherapy. He did that just to check out the hypnotist and make sure he was trustworthy, because he had a brother who was in a lot of difficulty and thought that may be one possibility to help him. So this man sort of made an appointment and went under hypnotherapy. And he said that he was a most unlikely candidate. He was in the Army Reserve. He was a big businessman in Perth, and he was just had to do some training in case there was a terrorist attack in Perth. And it was just an exercise for 2 or 3 days, and he hardly slept for those 2 or 3 days. And then at the end of the 3 days, he had to go to the hypnotherapist. He was exhausted, but still alert. So he was put under hypnosis, and he got a past life. And this past life really shocked him. It's not what he expected at all. In his past life, he was born in Ireland. There was no Northern Ireland or Southern Ireland then. His family were extremely poor, and the only way to get out of poverty was to accept this job for the British Raj, sent to Australia as a prison officer. It was a terrible job, but his only way, he also hated the British as well, because he was Irish. And it was just because of what the British had done in Ireland at the time. And so he took the job, came to Australia, had all his recollections, which he didn't know where they came from, such as the pub in Fremantle where he met his wife, the place which after 2 or 3 years of service that they gave him in the southwest of West Australia, where he built his first house out of stone. He built it himself. About all of his kids, their names, the places. And of course, this was just under hypnosis, but it was all recorded. When he came out of hypnosis, he was told to remember this, and of course he could. The notes were taken down, it was recorded. So he went to the library, and this was only 100 years ago, 150 years ago. All those records should be there. You can imagine how you would feel when you found a record of the man you thought was you was in the library. It was real. He saw the marriage license of his former wife. I mean, really ex-wife, former life wife. And him. The pub where they met. The place where they got their first piece of land granted when the government was trying to develop that part of Australia. And the house, the stone house, which he built with his own hands. And he went down to visit. You can imagine what that must be like. This was a place you lived over 100 years ago. And the farmer thought they were crazy. But when he told him that the place which the farmer said, this is your old house, your old stone house, he said, no, it's not. The house I built was up on that hill over there. And that's where the farmer got very embarrassed. He said, I destroyed that house because it was in the way of good pasture. But that was an illegal act because that was a very old house which had been said by the government should never be destroyed. It was historic. And he even knew where his grave was. The last time I saw him, he hadn't visited that grave yet. Imagine you visiting the grave where you lived, where you were buried in your previous life. And that's pretty spooky. But you know, as a result of that, he said he was in the Army Reserve before. So, he would have drinks with his friends. He said from that time on, once he realized that this was true, he had to keep the 5 precepts. He had to. Because he knew just how powerful they were for making sure that if you do have when you do have a future life, it's a good life. But I just mention that because this is like our situation. We call it samsara. This is how life after life after life after life. Most of them won't be in this human realm, especially now, because there's so many human beings available. It's like rooms in a hotel. In the time of the Buddha, there was hardly any rooms. The population was small. So it's hard to get a human birth. Now there's lots. But nevertheless, what birth are you going to get in your next life? Sometimes people can remember things. Here in Singapore, I once gave a talk in one of the hospitals here. It was on like terminal, how we die, and how we can care for people when they're dying. But part of that, I introduced a term which is reasonably well known in palliative care, which is called terminal lucidity. Terminal lucidity is when a person is about to die. They may have been in a coma for a long time, they may have had dementia, they may not have even recognized you when you come in the room. And then these last, from 5 minutes to an hour of their life, they remember everything. There's no way that should be possible. Their brain is totally dysfunctional. And I remember just in this room of palliative care doctors and nurses, I asked, how many of you have experienced that? One of your patients, totally non-communicative for a long time because they're drugged to their eyeballs with morphine, or they're in a coma, or they've just got brain damage. How many of you have witnessed them like opening their eyes and being very clear and speak clearly just before they die? And about a third of the doctors and nurses that put their hand up, they'd experienced that. It's something which is real. That terminal lucidity is when your brain doesn't function anymore and the mind takes over. And this mind, what you access in hypnosis, what you access through meditation, can remember things which your brain just cannot remember. Just like who you were before. But in a way which is very clear. So it is not impossible to actually to prove that this is not your first life. You have lived before. And many of you may have seen or had those experiences of meeting somebody. I often say this about the love at first sight. I don't know any of you have had that experience, love at first sight. You see somebody and then, this is my wife for this life, this is my husband. It's weird, I'm not being romantic, I'm just saying, how on earth does that happen? And of course, it's not love at first sight. It's here we go again. And you're very happy for that to happen. You haven't finished with your time together. And it's weird that sometimes it's not always that was your wife in the past life and you marry her again in this life. Sometimes you even swap roles. You were the wife in the last life, now you're the husband. These experiences is often how we learn. And so little by little we do find there's heaps and heaps of evidence. It just makes so much sense, to me anyway, that it's almost like provable that past lives exist. And what does that mean, for you as a Buddhist or as someone interested? We have what we call the big picture. Not one life, but many lives. Not many lives, but a huge number of lives. Now, I do confess I don't usually watch any movies, but I remember traveling to Singapore once, and one of these people I respect said they just come back from Singapore, and they said there's a movie on the Singapore Airlines flight called Groundhog Day. He said I should look at that. And I'm glad I did, because it gave me some information which you could relate to so many lives. This was a story, it was Hollywood, it was not accurate, but at least it said one thing about this man, the star of the movie, who would wake up on the same morning. He'd go through one day, and when he went to bed or whatever happened, he'd wake up and he'd have to repeat the same morning again. Now, how would you think that would happen? What would it do to you? What is today? Today is Friday. Friday the 9th of June. Imagine you went to sleep tonight and you woke up on the morning of Friday the 9th of June. I had to get to Perth airport and fly again to Singapore. And it was wonderful to some of the Dhamma from that movie, that first of all you just want to improve your performance to make Friday the 9th of June better than it was before. And keep improving it, get more out of it. But how many times do you have to do that? And after a while, this gentleman, I forget whose name was, the actor, he got so bored and fed up living the same day again and again and again, even though he perfected it. So bored that he tried to commit suicide. He would drive the car off the cliff, and he would fall off the cliff and go boom. And then he'd wake up again on the morning of Friday the 9th of June. Whatever he did, he could not kill himself. Well, he did kill himself, he just woke up again the same morning. It was like an idea of reincarnation. Only we don't remember much of what happened in the past. Now, when a person really understands what I'm talking about there, you realize that this thing which we call life, as a girl, as a boy, as LGBTQAI+, and I respect everybody, people with dementia, so with maybe schizophrenia or any other mental illnesses, people with deformities, who lost a leg or who've got some other growths on their body which makes them look a bit weird. All of those things. Sometimes we think we don't want those. I think there's something gone wrong. When we understand what's really going on, we realize that this could be your next life. Once you understand a next life, sometimes I used to think that someone like a Donald Trump in his next life would have to be born as a Mexican. Won't be able to get into the United States. In other words, just to learn what life is really about. But after a while, how much can you learn? And after a while, is this it? Is there no escape, from samsara? You try to make it as best you possibly can. And many of you sitting in front of me have done an incredible job, of surviving, many difficulties in Singapore, getting a place to stay, reasonably good health, and good family. Sometimes people die. It reminds you of how uncertain life is. These things happen. You can't stop it. We all have to go one day. And after a while, we think, yes, I know we all have to go, but why now? I was saying even today to somebody that I work very hard, even though as a monk you think you can have a nice, easy life. This is my 72nd year on this planet, 49 years as a monk, and 49 years working for the same corporation. Long service, I'd never got long service leave. No retirement plan. No extra benefits. Usually, just the longer you serve, you get promotion, you get more money. I don't get more money, I get more work. But of course, that's not how you look at it. You don't look at it what you get out of this. You look at what you can give. In monastic Buddhist life, we look at it a totally different way. How much we can give and how much I can disappear. Say one of the best books which has got my name on it is The Art of Disappearing. And I mention this because this is part of the path of being a stream winner. Ajahn Chah would always tell me, and he would say it so often, I thought I couldn't understand it at first. That was one of the great things about being with a great monk like an Ajahn Chah. He said many things which I rejected. But somehow or other they got in my brain and I can never forget them. One of the things he would always say, that even when you are meditating, you're meditating not to attain things. You're meditating to let go of things, to disappear, for things to vanish, for things to go. So if any of you go on a retreat with me, I'd always tell you on that retreat, remembering what I was taught, you don't say what you've attained on this retreat. Instead, you measure your success by how much has disappeared, how much you've lost, how much greed, hatred and delusion have disappeared, how much worry about the past, how many stupid desires about the future you've lost. How are those things about the worries of the past and the future, the worries about your reputation, the worries about your ego, how much that's disappeared? This is the Buddhism which Ajahn Chah taught me. See how you can disappear. Which is one of the reasons why when you talk about stream winning, it's not something you attain. It's a sign that you're disappearing, you're vanishing. So your sense of self is going, and with that, the times you're going to get reborn in this realm. Basically, you've had enough. You don't need to be reborn anymore. You can start to disappear. That's one of the reasons why in that particular book, once it was written, and once it was published, they asked me to write the foreword to the book. And writing a foreword to a book, you can actually sit down and write something egotistical and proud. And instead of doing that, I didn't have much time, so I just sat down and just on the computer wrote something in about 15 minutes. And I sent it off to Wisdom Publications in the US, and I said, I know you're not going to like this, I'll write something else later. And they said, no, we love it, great. And that's a foreword there. And in that foreword, I said that the purpose of this book is to teach everybody how to vanish and disappear, how their sense of self, all that they own, all they possess, all your intelligence, your experience, all of that can vanish. So you can be totally light and free. How you can become a nobody. In this world, if you call someone a nobody, then that's a word of abuse. But now these days, if someone calls me a loser, I say, yes, You understand? That's what monks are. Isn't that the case? Ajahn Brahm, we're losers. We lost so much, so many burdens, so much suffering. There used to be a program apparently on TV called The Biggest Loser. Do they have something like that in Singapore? Yeah, Biggest Loser. Who was the biggest loser? The Lord Buddha. He lost all of his attachments, all of his desire, all of his suffering. He was the biggest loser. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You see, we're looking at this life in a totally different way. Not to gain more, but to lose more. Those who picked me up from the airport today, how much baggage did I have? When I arrived, I did have another bag, which we'll find out tomorrow what was in it. You asked me to carry this. This is some things for auction tomorrow. But also, just one bag, one little yarn, they call it. And that bag is like, go all over the world with that bag. That's all I have. I always remember just how the Buddha taught. He said, monks, be like a bird. Fly from place to place, only carrying the weight of your wings. That's a very powerful simile. I've looked up in the sky. I've never ever seen a bird going overseas with a suitcase and a backpack. That's why they can fly so lightly. And I try to do that as best I possibly can, because that's actually inspiring. It's great when you go through airports. And often they say, sir, you haven't picked up your baggage. I say, this is my baggage. This is all I've got. I said, how come? Because I'm a monk. These aren't Buddhists, but they're impressed. That's how a Buddhist should teach by example. Having few things. When you have few things, well, life is so much easier. So we're here to see how much of a loser we can be. When you're a loser, when you don't own things, you're getting closer and closer and closer to being a stream winner. If you have lots and lots of things and you fall in the stream, you drown. The less you have, the more you float. So this is one of the reasons why we have these so-called 4 stages of enlightenment. And the first stage of enlightenment is the stream winner. I won't go into depth about what that stream winner is, but there is one of the similes which the Buddha gave, which is so easy to understand. And it was a story of the shipwrecked sailors. And of these shipwrecked sailors, in the sutras, they don't call it shipwrecked, they were just men in the middle of the ocean. And I often thought, I remember having an argument with Bhikkhu Bodhi about that. I said, look, how come they're in the ocean? They must have been shipwrecked. They didn't fall from an aircraft in those days. So, shipwrecked sailors. The first shipwrecked sailor, actually I'm just doing the last 4, the last 5. The first shipwrecked sailor can float. He doesn't sink into the ocean. And they say that's a simile that you've got some good virtue and some good karma. So in the difficulties of life, in the storms of life, that you don't sink, you don't drown, you manage to keep afloat. And I like that simile because so many of you are really good people, you're kind people, you're virtuous people. Yeah, you have some faults, but they're not that big. And remember, just some monks do have psychic powers, so be careful when you come and talk to some monks. We know what's going on. But it doesn't really matter, it's just small stuff. You may think it's big, but it's small. You're keeping your head above water. metaphorically. And once you can keep your head above water, metaphorically, then if you're in the middle of the ocean, you look around. And as you're looking around, you can see in the distance dry land. Imagine, that's you in the ocean. You're above the water. You're not sinking, but you're looking and looking. How can you escape? You see dry land in the distance. They call that a simile for being a stream winner. You've seen safety. Once you've seen safety, what would you do? Swim towards it, yes. Just seeing is being a stream winner. Swimming towards it is being called a once returner. And after you've been a once returner, as you swim closer and closer to the shore, you get to that point where you don't need to swim anymore. You can stand and feel something solid under your feet. You're so close to the shore, you can stand in the surf and wade the rest of the way to the shore. That's being called a non-returner, so close. And then when you get to the shore, you're safe, you're on dry land. And that's called being fully enlightened. And there's many points to that. The first point is once you see the dry land, it's not something which just grows on you slowly. It's an event, something which happens. It could be through a talk. It could be through your meditation. But when you actually see, now I understand what this life is all about and what the problem is. And then once you see the safety, then you start swimming. And closer and closer you get, and you're so close, you become what they call the non-returner. And then after the non-returner, then you're fully enlightened. And it happens automatically. You cannot not swim once you've seen this dry land there. That's also the reasons why once a person is is a stream winner, then you have to get enlightened. You can't stop it. It's how many people would stop when they're in the middle of the ocean, close to death, and there's land over there? Of course you'd swim towards it. And it's usually 6 more lives before you become fully enlightened. Did I get that right? 6 more lives? I thought it was 7 more lives. That's right, this life is number 1. 6 more lives. So anyhow, one of the other great things about being a stream winner, which it can be weird for many people to understand, but once you understand it, you get much more detail about what it actually is as a stream winner. Anyone who has become a stream winner will no longer ever get rebirth in a lower realm, no matter what they've done. They cannot get reborn as an animal. They cannot get reborn as a ghost. They cannot go to the hell realms anymore. All those lower realms have been cut off from them. And that was always something which I thought at first was kind of unfair, isn't it? All that karma you don't have to pay off anymore. But that's very, very true. It's one of the reasons why in Buddhism we never have, in the Sangha anyway, the idea of punishment. Instead, the Buddha would always say, and it's something which I couldn't understand why, but I was very inspired with, if anyone makes a mistake, which really hurts somebody else, all they do is acknowledge they made a mistake. ask forgiveness and learn from it. That way you actually become a better human being. Is there anybody in this audience right now who's never made a mistake in their past? Can I assume from that you've all made mistakes? Of course you have. So how can we benefit from mistakes? We learn from them. And how can we truly learn? We have to acknowledge them, not hide them, not feel a lesser person because you have made a mistake. And that way, when you do make a mistake, you grow and it never happens again. You never feel you need to be punished. Even, I know I get into trouble for saying such things, but even some of the people have done some terrible things to others. If they could only admit what they've done, honestly, and get forgiveness, they will never ever do that again. I've collected many stories like that. Just an ordinary story, not extreme. There was a couple who come to our monastery once a week, and then she was, getting on in the years, 40 or 50 years of age, him too. And when she was taking his jacket to the cleaners to get dry cleaned, she noticed there was a piece of paper in one of the pockets. The piece of paper was a receipt from the local brothel. She found out that her husband was visiting prostitutes. And now, if you have been married to somebody for quite a few years and you found out that, what would you do? She said, I cannot trust him anymore. And they talked to me for over an hour over in Bodhinyana Monastery in Perth. He was saying, look, I'm stupid, I still love you, I still love her, she told to me. But I will never do it again, I promise. And she said, no, it has to be separation, divorce, I cannot trust you anymore, look what you've done. And to me that wasn't Buddhist at all. No forgiveness. Visiting other women, the prostitutes, that wasn't Buddhist either. But then I taught the woman into forgiving him. But it wasn't just ordinary forgiveness. It was forgiveness plus probation. I said, yes, she cannot trust you. You have to earn that trust. Re-earn it. And I said, the rules of probation are for the next 6 months, husband, you have to let your wife know exactly where you are. Let her know all your passwords. And be able to give you a call at any time and to check where you are. Probation for 6 months. And he agreed on that. And he did that. And that was quite a few years ago now. And they still come to Bodhinyana Monastery once a week. And they're very thankful. He made a terrible mistake which really hurt someone. But she understood how powerful it is to forgive. As long as the other person learns from that and never does it ever again. That's one of the great things which we could do. It's one of the great things we do for even, I will let you know this, even our retreats. I think I've said this in the Friday night talks, it's online. To make a point and also to help me in a problem I had, that on one of the meditation retreats that our cook. We couldn't find a cook to cook for the 9-day retreat. So I asked this other gentleman, you know him, Ajahn Mudita, that was Carl. And Carl was a great cook. He worked so hard, and he cooked all sorts of delicious food for 9 days. And at the end of the retreat, on the last ceremony there, we always, give loving kindness to everybody. And they said, "Where's Carl gone? He was such a great guy. He was really pleasant and kind. When we did the chopping up of the vegetables, he was, just so pleasant to us. And he worked so hard. Where's he gone?" And I announced, well, he's gone back to prison now. He was on work release from prison. And he was in jail for rape. When I said that, just like you, people looking at me, shocked. Ajahn Brahm, you allowed a convicted rapist to come into our retreat center for 9 days to do all the cooking? I said, yes. He's not a rapist. He's done a rape. There's one stupid act, or actually a couple of stupid acts apparently, which was done under the influence of drugs. Does that mean he can't be a good cook and serve other people? Give him that chance. They understood the power of forgiveness. I was taking a risk, I admit that, but I knew that guy. I trusted him, and he did not let me down. We judge people too harshly. Just because you've done something terribly wrong once doesn't mean you're a badly behaved person. And give people a chance. Most people I've found will live up to your trust and be really good people. We don't have the idea of punishment in Buddhism. Instead, we have that everybody makes mistakes. We're all growing in this world. We're learning. We give people the opportunity to grow and make amends for anything bad they did. A lot of people just take that, and they're just amazing just what they do with the chances you present to them. So guilt doesn't have really a place in Buddhism. Punishment doesn't either. Remorse, yes, I shouldn't have done that, I'm really sorry. Great, know that and never do it again. And that's what happens. So with a stream, we know that's part of it. You don't have this terrible thing about wanting to punish others because they've hurt you. You may find that strange, but that's actually what happens. And it also means your sense of self-identity gets less and less and less. That was a difficult thing for myself, I will admit, when I first started coming to Singapore. And I remember one of those big talks which I gave at the Suntec City auditorium. And I can imagine what it would be like. I was just a monk. And I remember walking in to that hall. There's about 3,000 of you taking your afternoon or evening off and listening to me, just me, no one else, no backup act, no supporting group, just sitting on a chair like right now and talking to you. And I thought, my goodness, I should get really scared. What if I say the wrong thing and I just make people turn away from the Dhamma, from Buddhism? And then what if I say the right thing and then people get inspired? Won't that give me such a huge ego that that's even more dangerous? Because when you sit up here and so many people are looking at you, listening to you, that's a danger of getting a huge ego. One of the things was I walked into that hall, I was scared of those two possibilities, making mistakes or getting a really big ego. And then I realized that I was not going to give the talk. It was Ajahn Chah who was going to give the talk, and all of the teachers which I'd known in my life, all the people that inspired me. I was just a combination of everything which had influenced me over all those years. And that was just so true. That's something I can trust in. When I give a talk, I don't have notes. Never do. I'm supposed to talk about stream winning, but this is actually what comes out. And I'm not afraid or embarrassed or anything. This is how I remember Ajahn Chah teaching, and all those other people who really influenced me. So what I'm doing, I'm lessening my sense of self. And I know that I don't get anything out of this. The longer I talk, the more tired I get. I'm almost 72 now, and I work very hard. And you do get tired, you do get exhausted. But nevertheless, in my hand, my poor old hand was signing all those books. My poor smile, which always gets photographed. We do that out of joy for you. It's not from ego, not from a sense of self. And that is important, because that's the other part of the being a stream winner, or what stream winning is. The real thing which disappears is this sense of self. But what is that sense of self? You can go philosophizing, but one of the most important parts of a sense of self is what you own. If you own anything, then you can find a self on the other end of that ownership. But if you don't own anything at all, it's like your sense of self vanishes. Little by little, it disappears. So I often ask myself, what do I own? You know that physically I don't own anything. How's the time going? Okay. Have I gone over time? No, I'm still going well. A few years ago, you may have heard this story before, I decided to get an Australian Commonwealth healthcare card for seniors. It was only just, why not? It's for free, and if I do get sick, I can use that, and it helps pay some of the bills. Unfortunately, I've never got sick for a long time. But nevertheless, I decided to get one of these Australian Commonwealth healthcare cards. So I went to the online, tapped in a few keywords, and then I got the reply saying, no, you cannot just do this online. You have to come to one of the offices and be interviewed to prove who you are, because I'm afraid of identity fraud. I don't know who would like to be me. But anyway, I've got to be careful there. So I had to make an appointment, and I went to this office. It's called Centrelink. And made an appointment. When I rocked up there, I was sitting in front of this woman and said, oh, welcome. Now look, she said, can you prove who you are? And my response, you all know my character. You've seen me so many times. I said, Madam, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, for the last 45 years I've been trying to answer that question. I haven't been able to yet. I can't prove who I am. Thank you for laughing. This woman never laughed. She said, this is serious. I need some ID. And I said, well, what ID? She said, can I see your credit card? I'm a monk, I don't have a credit card. Your bank account details. I don't have a bank account. Your retirement plan or your superannuation, I don't have any of that. Okay, well, where you live, you got your house purchase agreement. I don't own a house. Where do you live? I live in a cave. Well, your rental agreement from the Buddhist Society of West Australia for your cave. I don't have a rental agreement. I don't pay rent. And so they asked me, your driver's license. I don't have a driver's license. And said, the next thing they asked, your marriage certificate. I'm a monk, I'm celibate, I don't get married. And they asked for a few other things like that. And then she looked at me and said, you don't have any of those? And I said, no, I'm being honest, I don't. She said, well, you don't exist. Sorry, I couldn't help this. Sadhu, sadhu, the Buddha was right. It's like that being a monk. All the things which you have, which prove you exist, I don't have that stuff. I'm just glad that you recognize me when I'm at the airport. I have a passport, passport. Lucky for that. Because I got that when I was very young. So I probably wouldn't be able to get one now. But nevertheless, I thought, this is a wonderful teaching. When you don't exist, you don't have much burdens. You are disappearing. And it's not losing things. It's actually just, who really are you? Everything you think you own, you can't take it with you. Although there was one lawyer once, very clever chap, he found a way to take his wealth with him. He told his wife, he was about to die, in a few days, he's on his deathbed, and he said, I figured it out. What I want you to do is take those 2 big suitcases I have, when I go overseas, take them to the bank, there's plenty of money in the bank, I want you to fill those suitcases up with, what's the biggest currency in the world? Notes. Is it euros? Or pounds or whatever? What's the biggest Singapore note bill? $10,000. So he said, go to the bank and fill it up with cash, just $10,000 notes. No hundreds, no 50s, no 20s or anything, no coins, just $10,000 notes. It's quite a few million. There's enough money in there. But then what should I do, said the wife. Then bring it home, and just above my bed in the attic of my house, put the 2 suitcases carefully, just maybe a meter apart, just above my bed. Because my plan is that when I die and go up to heaven, I'll grab the suitcases on the way. and then when I'm in heaven, I can use all the money which I worked so hard for. That was his idea. And his wife, instead of arguing, followed the instructions, filled these 2 suitcases with cash, put them in the room, the attic above his bed, and just left them there. He did die within a couple of days, and she was busy with the funeral and everything. And then after a while, she checked to see if those suitcases were still there. Of course they were still there, full of the cash. And then she said to herself, stupid husband, he should have put those suitcases in the room below his bed, because I knew which way he was going. So anyway, being a stream winner, once you realize you don't own anything at all, really, and you can let everything disappear and fade away, then number 1, it's incredibly easy to get into meditation. What stopped you from going deeper into meditation? Just in the meditation I did earlier, all your responsibilities, your duties, what you think you own, the less you own, the easier it is to meditate. Just like the less luggage you have, the quicker you go through Changi Airport. The lighter you are, the higher you fly. This is actually why the more you disappear, the less you own, the closer you are to being a stream winner. When you are a stream winner, you realize not many lives left. You don't have to do this ever again. You get reborn. How many times has things happened to you which shouldn't have? Sometimes life can be so cruel, so uncertain, so difficult. How many tears have you shed? Can't there be an end of that? And of course, this is the way to eventually end those rebirths, so you never need to be reborn ever again. Free at last. That is what being a stream winner really is. Once you've had enough of these worlds, been here, done that, just like in the Groundhog Day, then maybe you can feel it's a time to be free. I think that's about an hour. Yeah, it is. So, there we go. That's stream winning and how to be a stream winner and what it's like. And for those of you who think, yeah, I don't want to be a stream winner, I want to enjoy life more, be careful. Once you've heard a talk like this, it's gone under your radar. Sorry, it's a bit late now. And I actually mean that, not a joke. Okay, so thank you for listening. Very good. Okay, so let's have some questions now. The harder the questions, the better.
Ajahn, the question and answers will be typed into online. The Menti code is up there.
Okay.
And then we will read the questions out to you. So in the meantime, shall we give the audience 10 minutes? Can I invite Ajahn to take a break for 10 minutes?
Take a break. Okay. What's a break? Okay.
Okay, so the question and answer session, please go to menti.com, MENTI, and type in your code 18834534. Write your question and please press submit. And the number is 18834534. And this is the only time you will hear 4D numbers because Ajahn Brahm does not give lottery numbers. 18834534. So we will have maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
You can read the question.
Oh, now? Okay. Oh, Ajahn, good news. The questions are here.
Very good. That was a very quick 10 minutes. That's usual. I'm used to being exploited.
In fact, Eileen says there are so many questions.
I know I can't go to bed tonight.
But first, Ajahn, I think that was such a fantastic talk, but it is missing something. I miss a punny joke. Please, can we have a punny joke to start with?
A funny joke to start with. Okay, punny joke about... Okay, there's two punny jokes. I think many of you may have heard this if you've been watching me online, about the mother who couldn't wake up her son in the morning to go to school. Is that the same in Singapore? The kids have to get up really early to go to school, they just won't get up?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the mum went to the son's bedroom. Son, it's time to get up. You've got to go to school. No, I don't want to go to school, Mummy. But you have to, son. No, I don't want to go. But you must go. Why, Mummy? The other kids don't like me. I don't like the teachers. I don't like anything about school. Why should I go to school, Mummy? Give me one good reason why I should go to school. Because, son, you are the headmaster.
I love it. I love it.
Okay,
thank you,
thank you.
Ajahn. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ajahn, may I offer the first question, please?
Yes.
The first question is, how do you love someone while practicing non-attachment?
How you love somebody without practicing attachment is actually the greatest act of love is to let somebody go. And I mean, that might be your mother or your father. You love them. There comes a time when they get very sick, very old. And sometimes this has happened, and it's a beautiful thing I've seen. The person you love so much is in the hospital, in the bed. They've only got a few days to go, but they keep struggling to live. You wonder, why on earth are you doing that? You're hurting yourself so much. And then you say to your mother or your father, Dad, I give you my permission to go. Don't try and keep alive because of me. You've been a wonderful father. Please, Dad, just let go and go to your next birth. This body is just too old for you. It's not working anymore. I've seen so many beautiful acts like that. Even this woman who loved her husband so much, and they were both young. They used to be very fit, going white water rafting. And I was with them, and she was, why is my husband? The doctor said he should be dead a couple of days ago. He's still alive, and he's suffering so much. And I sort of told her, have you given your husband permission to die yet? That was all that was needed. He was trying to keep alive because the last person he wanted to cause suffering to was a woman he loved so much. That's why he was trying to keep alive. And so it's a beautiful thing. In their bedroom, she jumped on his bed, put her arms around this man who was so thin from months of cancer, and hugged him gently and said, Steve, I give you permission to die. And then they just hugged. And he died that night. It was beautiful. Now that was an act of love. She cared so much for her husband. She realized the problem was that he loved her too much and was trying to keep alive for her, instead of just letting him go. That's how we let go. With amazing love. And there comes a time for you, your family members, the people you love so much. When Ajahn Brahm gets old, you go to his bedside, and Ajahn Brahm, so I give you permission to die. But I'm not sick yet, I say. You trying to get rid of me? But you know that time when you have to let somebody go. And that's a beautiful act of love. You're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about the person you care for so much. And that's my answer to that question.
Thank you, Ajahn. The next question is, how do you know when you are a stream winner?
Now that's a good question, because something happens, some great insight happens, which just turns you upside down. Sometimes you see things which, why didn't I see that before? So amazing, so beautiful. First of all, it's an event with huge amounts of bliss. And you're free. This is a big thing. It's like, you're not out of prison yet, but you've got your, what's it called? Your parole orders. You're going to leave prison pretty soon. And of course that'll give you so much happiness and bliss. And, but also you've got to be careful, because sometimes you think you may be a stream winner. You think you may be enlightened, and you find out you're not. I said this, I think, I don't know where I said this, but it takes about 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Can I tell you when I became enlightened? Have you heard that story yet? I think you probably have, but forgotten. At least you're interested. This was my 4th year as a monk in Thailand. no responsibilities, lots of great meditation, and just sometimes you get really hot in your meditation. Things were going really, really well. So I kept on walking meditation, sitting meditation, till late on in the night. This was maybe about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. About that time, no sleepiness, just mind was getting so many amazing insights. And then the big insight came. Wow, wow, wow. No sleepiness, lots of energy. And I thought, wow, another enlightened being has arisen in this world. And so I just, what to do next? I wasn't tired. I went to my room, meditated some more. I did lay down for 10 minutes, but there's no sleepiness there at all. So I got up and went to the hall. The bell went at 3 a.m. in the morning, every morning. I was there sitting before the bell went. No sloth and torpor, perfectly nice meditation. When we did the morning chanting, which I did every time, most of the monks were just really dull, getting up 3 o'clock in the morning and having to do some chanting. But for me, Yo so bago, I had just so much energy. And I couldn't be quiet. Whoa! I went on arms round and on the arms round. This was in northeast Thailand, in the Isan. They usually put just bits of sticky rice in the bowl, that's all. But every time one of the villagers put sticky rice in the bowl, I zapped them with so much loving kindness. I was a newly enlightened being. Zap, zap. You don't know how lucky you are to give rice to a newly enlightened being. And that's all we used to get on arms round. But when I got back to monastery, what we usually had was just one pot of rotten fish curry. That's what it was called, rotten fish curry. Fish kept from the year before and now boiled up with some vegetables, well, actually not really vegetables, I don't know what they boiled it up with, but it was really terrible food. But you know, that's all you had to eat. But that morning there was another pot there. And that pot had pork curry in. I used to be a vegetarian before I was a monk, but you know, this is what the locals say. That's what you have to eat. And I thought, wow, the heavenly beings have recognized there's an and this is where it came from. It's the only day they had that. So then what we did, we sat down. I was number 2 monk in the monastery, the head monk there, and he was a local boy. He was actually born in that village. And so he took the pots of pork curry and had these huge ladles, really huge ladles he put in his own bowl. No one could eat that much. But then what he did next was unforgivable. He took the remainder of the pork curry and poured it in to the saucepan of the rotten fish curry, stirred it all up, and saying, it's all the same, it's all the same, it's all. And I thought, if it was all the same, why didn't you mix it up before you took yours? I was not going to eat my, one meal of a 3-month range retreat, which was delicious. And I was really angry. I'm really angry at him. How can he do such a thing? And then I realized, yes, right, enlightened beings don't get angry. And all my anger disappeared, and it was replaced by depression. Now, honestly, if you think you're enlightened, you find out you're not. That is very, very depressing. So that's when I became enlightened. I found out I wasn't. And that's the problem there. That's the reason I tell the story. A lot of times people may think they're a streamer. You have to wait for a while and then find out if it's real and true or not. But anyhow, don't tell anybody. That's a good sign. Even enlightenment. There is one of the stories I often quote. It's against the Vinaya to tell any lay people about any of your attainments, except if they were false, like I just said. But just I remember when the Buddha was alive, he was sitting next to his attendant Ananda, and this monk came up to the Buddha and said, "One who is enlightened never thinks they're better than anybody else, never thinks they're worse than anybody else, never thinks they're the same as anybody else." And we said, "Yes, correct, well done." And another monk came up and said exactly the same thing. One who's enlightened never thinks they're better, worse, or the same as others. Then the Buddha turned around to Ananda and said, "Those were two new Arahats, enlightened beings. That is how enlightened beings tell me that they have just had that attainment, that letting go, that sense of ego comparing to others. That's gone forever. Not the same, not better, not worse. Just not there anymore." Okay, try another question.
Thank you, Ajahn. It is very typical of a Singaporean question. We want to get there faster. Are there any methods or practices we ought to practice in order to increase the possibility of stream entry? And can a lay person with his daily life and activities be a stream enterer faster?
Yeah. Yeah, the most important thing to practice to get there fastest is be patient. Now, I never actually said much about the way to being a stream winner. It's usually always the best way of doing anything is the eightfold path. Not a sevenfold path, not a sixfold path, but the full eightfold path, which is learning some wisdom and just all the way to meditation. This is one of the things I didn't say because I didn't want to make it too deep. But eventually when a person does just enter a jhana, the amazing thing about those states is you're just not there. A lot of bliss, huge awareness, but the sense of self is gone. And don't ever think that as a layperson, no matter what your role is in life, that you can't do that. Some of the most surprising people have come on my retreats have got these jhanas. There's one fellow, I often mention him. He came on one of my 9-day retreats in traditional Australian national dress, which was a pair of thongs, shorts, and a dirty singlet, like a t-shirt. And that was it. And he was covered with tattoos. Big guy, big bushy hair. And I admit this, I made a mistake. I said, "I think you've come to the wrong place, sir. Carnet Prison Farm is just up the road from here." I judged him. He said, "No, I'm on your retreat." Well, I looked in the name, he was on the retreat. "Oh, sorry, I apologize, thank you." And of all the people on that retreat, he was the best meditator. He actually got into a jhana. He disappeared for many years, but I found him later on. He was over in, I think, Sydney. And he said that experience changed his whole life, as I expect it would do. Beautiful, deep meditations where you disappear. It's one of the reasons if you try to get those states, they're impossible. You have to let them open the door of your heart and let it come in. You can't go and grab it and bring it in. And that's what I've been telling so many of you for years. In meditation, it's that you're aware and you're kind. That's all. Nothing more than that, no effort. Just be aware and being kind. So your mind is like a friend to you. And honestly, that's how my mind is. When I was meditating, when I stopped talking, it was just my mind and I spent 5 or 10 minutes together having a wonderful time. It's like you meet an old friend. Look, many of you are really nice old friends, known you for years. And when I see you, just ask, how are you? I really mean that. It's just, it's great to see you again. That's like my mind. I'm so busy doing other stuff. And then when I have a chance, my mind and I, we just hang out together. We chill out. We're the best of friends. Now if you make that your mind and you, best of friends, you never wander off anywhere. How on earth can you wander off from someone you love so much and you feel so at ease with? You don't try and control a best friend. You just enjoy time with them. And that's like with my mind. And sometimes we hang out together for so long, eventually everything becomes very still and wonderful. Sometimes best friends don't even need to talk together. It's like we know each other so well, the conversation is not necessary. And that's like mind and me. So of course, if you have a nice peaceful mind like that, at times, and just to get so peaceful, you get into these deep meditations. You disappear. Have a wonderful time. That's the best way to get into being a non-returner. Being a stream winner. You vanished. You disappeared. And the other thing, I can't vanish, I've still got so many things to do. If I don't turn up for work tomorrow morning, and I tell my boss I've just going into jhana, he's not going to accept that at all. Fair enough, but there's many times you're not working. So you come on some of these retreats we teach, then maybe see what happens.
Thank you, Ajahn. This one, I knew this was coming. Dear Ajahn, you mentioned that being a stream winner, the lower realms of rebirth are cut off. Then how does the karmic laws of cause and effect take fruit? Does your karma go poof? Thank you.
Yes. It does. They even have a word for it in Pali. It's called ahosi karma. Karma that was and is no more. Remember, karma is what you own. As you start disappearing more and more, you own less and less and less, until that tie between you and the bad karma of the past is totally cut off. You're not carrying around these heavy rocks in suitcases and backpacks anymore. You're free of that. That's a wonderful thing to know, honestly. We've all done bad karma in the past, big bad karma, small bad karma, but we've accumulated so much over so many lifetimes. And do we have to pay it off, with penances and stuff? No. Once you realize that, there's mistakes you made, you didn't know that much, and you were learning. And after a while, it's all just let go of. Everything you've done, you're totally free. This is not making it up. You know me. I don't make things up except for jokes, obviously, but this is real. You're free of all the old bad karma. And that actually shows you, even now, some of the stuff you've done in the past. Don't torture yourself with that. Just let somebody know, get some forgiveness, and you're free. You're not going to become a worse person, become a much better person. Okay, it does go poof. Go on.
Thank you, Ajahn. Another one about stream winning. Can lay people who do not strictly observe the precepts become a stream winner?
Yes, you can. You make it harder for yourself if you not keep the precepts. But one thing I will tell you, that after you've become a stream winner, then you will keep the precepts easily. You can't not do that. Basically, all the precepts which I keep, there's heaps and heaps of precepts for a monk. You never feel it's a burden. It's just nature. It's just, why would you want to break any precepts? And that's a question I ask. And to this day, I can't see why more of you, don't keep 5 precepts. It's a much more peaceful, healthier lifestyle. It doesn't cost you any money, but saves you a lot. Even in business, when people are just are not honest. I just was in Sri Lanka recently. And one of the difficulties in that country, it's getting better, but there's still the difficulties there. There's many dishonest leaders in that country. And that causes so much poverty and hunger for ordinary people in the village. I wish it wasn't that way. This is supposed to be a Buddhist country. Singapore, I think there's more honesty. I'm sure there's sometimes people lie, or they so dishonest, cheat or something. Please, that's not going to help you or help this country at all. Please be honest and fair. You can work hard, but it's not just about money. It's about your friends and the people you've helped. So don't go the way of corrupt nations. Okay?
Thank you, Ajahn. This one is perfect for meditation master. Are nimittas necessary before entering the first jhana?
They are preferable. Is it really necessary to get a plane, an aircraft, from here to Phuket on Sunday morning? You get a train and a bus and a taxi. You can walk. Is it possible to get from Singapore to Phuket by walking? A bit of swimming as well across the straits, but that's possible. But it's not recommended. When there's an easier way, why not take the easier way? It's the same with nimittas. It's the easier way. They're there, and you know exactly where you are. So it's the more beautiful, easier way.
Thank you, Ajahn. Ajahn, may I have permission to go for the question and answer until about 9:30? There are about 60 questions. Apologies.
You mean 9:30 tomorrow morning?
That will kill all of us. Ajahn, the next question is, most of us will not be able to give all our possessions or give up all our possessions or cravings. If not, can one try to give and forgive as much as we can? Will it help us to survive just above the water?
Yes, indeed. Forgiveness is a beautiful thing. I remember many years ago I was asked, say you're in a relationship and your partner lets you down. They asked, how many times should you forgive? And the answer was, always one more time. In other words, no limit. And if the other person has got even a small amount of wisdom or insight, they realize how wonderful that is, that somebody's actually forgiving them. How many men or how many women would actually forgive that? You got someone special there. So it does actually help. For you, when you've done something really stupid, would you like to be forgiven? If somebody would do that to you, how would you feel? If that's, say, first of all, I said this a lot, you guys don't think you can get away with adultery, with having a mistress. This is the trouble with men. They think they can hide it. And I often mention the case of the head of the CIA, General Petraeus. It's quite a few years ago now. He was the head of the CIA, and he was having an affair with his biographer. Even the head of the CIA could not keep it secret from his wife. So you guys have got no chance. And it's the wrong thing. Why do you want to get found out? And you cause so much unhappiness, to your kids, to your wife, your partner, to your parents as well. It's a nasty thing to do. You think you can get away with it, but you won't be able to. So don't even go there. And if it does happen, please don't do it again, ever.
Thank you, Ajahn. When you fail a driving test, you can always take another test with your knowledge from the previous test. Why can't we know our previous life knowledge in our current life? Won't that be easier?
Of course you can know. You just need to get enough deep meditation to remember your past lives. Remember them accurately. That's one of the things which we do on meditation retreats. Once a person starts to get some deep meditation, close to nimittas or jhanas and stuff, when you come out afterwards, you ask yourself, what is my earliest memory? And if your mind is still enough, these memories will just come up into your mind almost immediately. But these are memories not like the ordinary memory of like what we had for lunch today. These are memories, you're back there reliving the experience. You're back in there. It's like a memory of a relived time. So there you can actually start to experience, what was my name? Where is this place? Who was I? What was I doing? And you can understand a lot of the reasons why you are who you are today. So you can recall it, but meditation is the best way. The second best way is through the hypnotic regression, but it's never as clear and as obvious as when you have it through meditation. And you also have the third way, is spontaneous memory of a previous life. And the reason we don't remember this is because a lot of time it's just conditioned out of us. It makes life quite difficult sometimes if you remember who you were married to before, what you did before. It does complicate things a lot. Okay, next question.
Thank you, Ajahn. Another follow-up question on forgiveness. What to do if you acknowledge and learn from it and improve, but the other person still doesn't forgive you, and you cannot avoid that person?
Again, do the probation thing. Probation thing is just where you let the other person know, look, I won't do this again. And you can check me out as much as you want. I've got nothing to hide.
Thank you, Ajahn. Another question is, if a person who made a mistake is not remorseful, what happens?
If they're not remorseful, they're being very, very stupid to themselves. How can you not be remorseful when you've hurt somebody? You think, I'd rather have not done that. If you're not remorseful, sometimes it's because you're too proud, too egotistical. And you think, well, they deserve that, everybody does that. You're not really facing reality. You haven't got that honesty inside of you. So hopefully that enough people, especially all Buddhists, are honest. They're upfront with what they do. And then, of course, if you do something wrong, you are remorseful. Oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. I wish I hadn't have said that. Of course you are remorseful. What are those terrible things which I have done? I keep on saying the same story because it's the one I remember the most. That it was my mother's birthday. And I was about a 7-year-old kid at the time, maybe 6, I'm not sure. I decided to get her a special present. And it was easy to get because in London they had, many of these shops were selling eels to make this English dish of eels and mashed potatoes. So I went to the shop with my own money and bought an eel. And I put a live one, put it in a box, and I got some gift paper, with nice little flowers on or something. And I wrapped up the box with this beautiful paper, as best as a 6 or 7-year-old kid could, a nice ribbon on it, and a greeting card. Happy birthday, Mummy, from your son. My name was Peter. From your son, Peter. Happy birthday. And I presented it to her as her birthday. She never expected that. Such a wonderful surprise. Her little 6 or 7-year-old son had got her a special birthday present. And I handed it to her. Happy birthday, Mummy. Oh, it was so sweet. And I could almost see the tears in my mother's eyes. And then she opened the box. And this eel, I could not have trained it to do better. He lifted up his head and looked at my mother. She screamed her head off. Of course, I wish I hadn't have done that. I did feel remorseful. But, I was a kid at the time. Sometimes that's what kids do. It was a joke. But, it made my poor mummy scream on her birthday. That's why sometimes, I know I've done a bad karma there. When you offer me gifts, I sometimes say, what's in there? Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn. Does Buddhism help with mental health issues?
Oh, goodness. Hugely.
What are your thoughts on how some unscrupulous organizations which make use of this vulnerability and scam people of their life savings?
They should feel incredibly remorseful. These are people who are hurting. And you take away the few dollars they have. Should never do something like that. When I was, again, a small kid, maybe 6 or 7 years of age, I had, I think it was an Irish sixpence. And then you can't use it in any shops, it's not legal currency there. So I went up to this old man and said, can you change the sixpence for me? And he was very kind, he did, and I gave him the Irish sixpence. And my friend at the time said, when that old man goes home and he counts his money, he found his missing sixpence. I didn't sleep that night, I felt terrible. And at least I had that sense of how my actions would affect others. I just can't do that anymore. It's only sixpence, but from that old man that may have been, he had to go without some type of food that day. He would survive, but I felt awful about that. Well, the last time which I ever killed an animal was after my father died. There was a mouse in my mother's apartment. I set a trap for it. I was very smart. I caught that mouse. I heard the mouse trap smash, and I went to see, and there's a dead mouse in the trap. And I had to take it out of the house, or the apartment, and put it in the bins. And as I was taking it out, it was still warm. And I was stroking it. It was a beautiful animal. And It was clean. I could not strike. I didn't need to wash my hands afterwards. And that I was responsible for killing that. Again, I felt terrible. That's the last animal I killed. So after a while, you got that sensitivity. You don't want to do things like break precepts. Okay, next question.
Thank you, Ajahn. What should we do if parents do not accept same-sex relationships?
Okay, bring them over to the Buddhist fellowship. Let me talk to them.
Welcome.
Yeah, no, it's something which I had girlfriends. I never had boyfriends. I was heterosexual. And I remember this guy came up to me when I gave a talk in Perth. I'll never forget him, because he came up to me and said, religion has been very cruel to those who are gay. And you could feel the pain inside of him. And I kind of made a resolution from that day on that I would never discriminate. If a person wants to live a gay lifestyle, welcome. We have many wonderful gay members, and lesbian, transgender, the whole works of our Buddhist society in Western Australia. And I really respect them. They give and serve and help so much. And honestly, I'd rather have a person who's gay or lesbian on our committee of our Buddhist society in Western Australia than a guy who has adultery and doesn't keep his promises to his wife. Of the two, gay is always much better. I mean that, it's as practical. They're the ones they can trust. If you cheat on your spouse, then who else are you not going to cheat on? So please, remember, the Buddha said that we give loving kindness to all beings, and that includes gays, lesbians, transgenders, LGBTQIA+. And the country will be much better as a result of that. Who are famous gay people you know? Elton John? Tchaikovsky? There's so many amazing beings who were gay, did wonderful things for our world. Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn. How do we manage our thoughts and emotions if we feel suffering, being stuck in a job we can't leave, for instance, or I will combine the two questions, being stuck in a job or having to see a person of unreciprocated love, the suffering that comes with these situations. Thank you, Ajahn.
First of all, being in a job you don't like, that's why they pay you. That's a bribe to do something you'd rather not do. So make the job more pleasurable for yourself and for others. So it's a job. You give it as best you possibly can. The more you give to the job, actually the more you'll start to enjoy it. And unrequited love. Sometimes you can imagine if you really love another person, but they don't return your love, then if it really is love, selfless love for the other person, you're just happy that they're happy. I mentioned this little simile to find out if you really love your partner or you're attached to your partner. Which one is it? Suppose you go on one of our meditation retreats, like the one in Phuket coming soon. When you come home to Singapore, you find your partner has run away to the Maldives with another person. How would you feel? Would you feel, I I'm so happy that my partner is having a much better time, with this other person than with me. They're having more joy, more happiness. Isn't that what you wish them? Now they're achieving that. Or would you think, no, they're my husband, they're my wife. They've got no right to run off with somebody else. That means you're just concerned about your own happiness, not really theirs. So that's the difference between love and attachment. If it really is love, you're happy that person that you love is more happy somewhere else. I'll let you think about that one, because I don't think many of you are accepting that one.
It's difficult to achieve, Ajahn. Next question is how to know when one know when they are stream enterers? Any characteristics that we can identify them?
Yes, one characteristic is that you do have this incredible confidence in the Buddha. It is sometimes your respect for that being just multiplies many, many times over. You experience, understand what the Buddha actually did. It was fantastic. I'm not saying this not because I'm a Buddhist monk, but this is one of the characteristics, your trust and faith in what the Buddha, who he was and what he did and why he did it, increase enormously. And the Dhamma and the purpose of a Sangha, all of those that get very, very, very strong. It's also one of the reasons why, you respect these things like precepts even more. And generosity as well. Being a kind, good a person. You have to kind of trust also that, that if you do help somebody, you never lose out on that at all. Okay.
Sorry, thank you, Ajahn. What happens when we die?
You stop breathing. Look, I know if you put that question a bit deeper, that might do better. But when I was in Sri Lanka, I did get some really stupid questions. And one of the questions which I got there, I just, after you have many stupid questions, you try your best to answer them. It was a question that was on a piece of paper. Some Sri Lankan monks say the Buddha was born in Sri Lanka. What's your comment on that, Ajahn Brahm? And I said straight away, that is wrong, because everybody knows the Buddha was born in Australia. Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn. How do I improve my focus?
Don't improve your focus. What you're meditating on, see if you can give it more joy and happiness. There's times when, you see something. If we had some sort of incredibly supermodel come in here, would you need to focus your attention on them? If some really hot K-pop star came in here, all you ladies, would you need to focus on them? Or just your eyes would be drawn to them? What is the secret of focusing? It's what you find really important, what you give value to. That is what you focus on. So don't use force, use wisdom, kindness. It's easy to focus. Just your mind gets drawn there. Well, look, I'm being honest again with you. When I start watching my breathing, when the breathing starts to come up, I've had such wonderful experiences with my breath. I don't need to focus on it. It draws me to it. It draws me in, not the other way around. I don't need to focus on it. You just get attracted to it. It is like a supermodel, my breath. And when you get nibbiters come, oh my goodness, that's the most amazing, beautiful hottie. Look, I'm a monk now, but nevertheless I'm trying to speak your language. I don't know if I'm succeeding or not, but it attracts you. If you see a nimitta, you can't take your eyes off it. It's gorgeous. Most beautiful thing you've seen. Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn. Dear Ajahn, can you monks see a layman's past life or karma? How about your own?
Of course, personally, I cannot claim that because that would be an offensive pajitya for me. But I do know monks who can remember their past lives. And the only way they can know your past life is if it was in their own past lives. If they you were their brother or sister or something. But this is one of the... I mentioned this in Sri Lanka in a retreat I gave over there. It's sometimes frustrating as a monk. You can't tell your own personal stuff. And some people say, oh, Ajahn Brahm doesn't say any personal stuff, therefore, it's obvious he hasn't got any attainments or anything. And I try to get out of that by using strange language, such as, it was again in Sri Lanka on a previous visit, where a group of monks asked me, said, you talk a lot about jhanas. Ajahn Brahm, have you ever experienced a jhana? They asked me directly. And asked Venerable Mudita, if I said yes, then that would be an offensive pajitya. You can't say that. But then, how can you make an answer which is helpful? So this is the answer which I came up with. Said, Ajahn Brahm, I said, I cannot enter jhana. Ajahn Brahm cannot enter jhana. But I've given so many lectures about that, written books about it. Are you saying you made all that up? And then I say, Ajahn Brahm has to vanish first, and then the jhanas happen. So it's not making it as a claim, kind of. But it's also giving this wonderful Dhamma. You have to disappear. You don't own these things. There are stages of letting go. The more you let go, the more you disappear, the less you own. The mindfulness is very strong, but there's no sense of self in there. Anyway, that's the best I could do.
Thank you, Ajahn. I think I know the answer to this question. Ajahn, what do you think of premarital sex?
Okay, so what's the answer?
I was thinking that you were going to say, no, I don't think of premarital sex.
That's correct. I don't think of premarital sex. I don't think of sex. But look, I've got to be... so you can't tell about your deep experience, but this sort of stuff you can tell people. That when I was a lay person, I had a long-term girlfriend. We weren't married, and we had sex together. And that was actually helpful for me, because at least I know what I was giving up when I became a monk. And also, you know what... I'm trying not to break my precepts again. what ended that relationship was actually going on a meditation retreat and getting a very nice deep meditation. And that was, I've written about this before, that was when the joys of deep meditation, the sheer pleasure of it, was way better than sexual intercourse. I'm not doing that to offend people, using the word sexual intercourse as a monk. I was a lay person at the time. But the deep meditations were far more joyful. A beautiful pleasure. And that really surprised me. You know, one of the first things which, when you emerge from those states, why has no one told me about that before? That's why I like telling you. If you're into pleasure, the pleasures of renunciation and meditation are way better than almost anything you can achieve in the world. I'm being sincere. So, but it messes up your relationships.
Thank you, Ajahn. This one is about the attachment to happiness in jhana. Sometimes the byproduct of meditation is happiness, and we form a sense of attachment to this state of happiness. Isn't it dangerous, the attachment to happiness?
Thank you for that question. Yes, there is attachment if you experience these deep meditations called jhanas. And the Buddha mentioned that. It's in the Pasadika Sutta. Anyone who gets attached to the pleasures of the jhanas can only expect one of four results. Nothing else. One of these four is going to happen if you get attached to the pleasures of jhana. Stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. That's what the Buddha said. You are supposed to enjoy the pleasures of deep meditation. Don't be afraid of them. They're powerful. They overcome your sense of self. It's blissful. You have a wonderful time. That's why people keep booking in for our meditation retreats. And they get booked out in, 1 minute? And the reason is because they know this is enormous fun. Really big joy. Bigger than you've ever experienced before. And this actually leads to stream winning. Once returning, non-returning, and full enlightenment. You also heard me say there's only one danger in being attached to those joys of meditation, and that is, it's very likely that you'll lose all your hair. You want to renounce. Go on.
Thank you, Ajahn. If I want to be the greatest loser, does that mean I should not study and not work?
No, just study the correct things. Study the Dharma and just work for the Buddhist fellowship.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Ajahn. This is about yourself, Ajahn. What is your most regretful and happiest incidents in your life?
In whose life?
Yours, Ajahn.
Whose?
Thank you. Thank you. So I think that is the answer. How will we know when we have eventually let go of everything?
There's nothing left. There's nothing to worry about. Nothing to lose. Nothing needed anymore. Again, thank you, Singapore, for giving me this experience. When I was here around Wesak time, I was invited to give a talk. I think they're called Little Gems. It was a kindergarten. And I'd never asked how old were these people I was supposed to be teaching. I think they were 4 and 5, I think. Really little kids. There's no way I can give a talk like I've just given you to 4 or 5-year-olds. So I had to be innovative. As they talk about Wesak. So I said, look, the Buddha's Wesak celebrates the birth, enlightenment, final passing away of the Buddha. So the birth. And after he came out of his mother's womb, he took 7 steps and put the finger up. This is my last life, I am the number 1 in the world. So I got all the 4 and 5-year-old kids. Okay, start here, walk 7 steps, and put your finger up the right way around, please. Not the middle one, but this one. And they did that. They were actually acting out, because that's one thing I do remember as a kid. They can visualize, they can act, but they can't do the logical type of thinking. So that was the birth. Now the enlightenment. You see the big Buddha statue. So you can see, sit on the floor, cross your legs, just like the Buddha statue in front of you. Put your right hand over your left hand, thumbs touching back straight. And imagine you're the Buddha, just enlightened. They had their eyes closed. There's nothing to worry about ever again. You don't need anything ever again. You don't have to worry about storing anything, because you don't need anything. You don't have to worry about your health or any dangers. You're perfectly free. You know about the meaning of life. This is your last birth. You don't have to worry about anything. You are at peace. Imagine what that's like to be at peace. And the kids got it. But what surprised me was all the teachers and the parents in that room also got it. And when I said, okay, now you can open your eyes, they said, no, keep your eyes closed. They were enjoying every moment of it, feeling what it's like to be a newly enlightened Buddha. Wow, that was like a taste of enlightenment. I was leading the description. It went down so well. They asked me, Ajahn Brahm, please, you're supposed to be giving a talk this evening. Forget about the talk. Just let's do a nice Buddha Anusati, a meditation on the Buddha. Like a kid, imagining what it must be like to be fully enlightened. No one can harm you. No one can upset you ever again. No one can disturb that peace. It's solid. Anyway,
thank you, Ajahn.
That was good, yeah. Go on.
Thank you. There is another, can we, one last question, Ajahn, because it's 9:30. I always compare myself to others and feel bad because I don't have the luxuries or lifestyle items that they have. How do I prevent this?
You are very lucky. You've got more luxuries than I have. So in other words, you're a loser. Well done. You're much closer to stream winning than other people. So in other words, there's no comparison at all with anybody. And this is, sometimes people say, you're an old monk now, so you should be much more mellow. You're a young monk, you should be like this. Is it easier to get enlightened as a young person, or as an old person, as a gay person, as a female, as a male? Which is the best life to become enlightened? It doesn't matter. I've often noticed that females, this is just anecdotal experience, females have a much easier way to get into jhanas. But once they get into the jhanas, the men usually catch up because they've got a much better wisdom faculty. The jhanas are an emotional journey. Powerful emotions. It's the best way you can describe it. And if you don't know how to deal with those, sometimes people get either afraid or controlling. And if for some reason or another the male brain seems to be much easier to be logical and to form connections and get wisdom. That's a gross approximation, but that seems to be that we all catch up in the end. So there's no advantage as a man or a female, or a young or old, Singaporean or African or whatever.
Thank you, Ajahn. Last one is cute. Hello, Ajahn Brahm. Thank you very much for speaking to us this evening. Thank you. Hope you have a good night's rest.